formats to chain me on the same page. We are effortless, schemaless, living in the future. You and me, made for us, serverless, living in the future of the clouds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's workshop, Building an Application with Vue and TypeScript. I'm Ryan Welford, and I'm joined by David Jones-Gilardi. Hello, David.
Well, hello, Ryan. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. If you guys can hear us and see us just fine, let us know. Give us a thumbs up in the chat. I want to make sure that everything is coming through clear. I saw a question. Mark Martin asks, I might be on the wrong channel. Is this a tutorial or a dance music video channel? A little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. I'd say more on the tutorial end.
Definitely more,
but,
yeah.
If you want to dance to the music video, by all means, feel free. Oh, to finally say you're not audible, I guess, but I see some other folks giving a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, and I see Stefano did say sound is perfect.
Cool. All right. You might be muted. Your tab might be muted. Check that. All right. So without further ado, like I said, I'm Ryan Welford. This is David. We are both developer advocates here at DataStax, but we are not the only ones who are with you today in the chat. We have a whole team of people, team members that are ready to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to ask questions in the YouTube chat. We also have a Discord that you're invited to. You can ask questions there. And there will be someone available to answer those questions as we go through the content. So make sure you say hi to all those great people. All right, so we are streaming on both YouTube and Twitch, but we really only monitor the chat on YouTube. So if you have questions, make sure you use the YouTube chat. Twitch is kind of used as a backup in case YouTube craps out on us and we need to switch streams. But YouTube is where you can ask questions. You can also ask questions on Discord, and actually, you can type in !Discord and get the link. And
you know what
you are
happens
invited.
if you do !Discord in Discord, Ryan?
You probably get the link to Discord because it's the same. But yeah, you are invited to join our Discord. We have several thousand members already, and we're all there to learn more about development in general, but in a lot of ways, specifically Cassandra, Apache Cassandra related topics. And there's always someone there that can help. And we will be answering questions during the stream there as well, and outside of the stream as well. So if you have questions and the stream is over, the workshop is over, feel free to continue asking questions in Discord.
And Ryan, just something to point out, I'm noticing, is Nightbot...
It should be going. It might take a little bit.
It's just taking a moment? Okay, because a bunch of
Yeah.
us did Discord and nothing's happening yet, so...
Okay. I did neglect to add Nightbot until just a little bit ago, so it might take a little bit. It'll catch up though.
Okay, all right.
Apologies.
Gerardo asks, what is the bang before Discord for? So that is a command that we're giving to a special chat bot that we have, that when you do bang, the exclamation point, and then the word, so bang Discord, then Nightbot will automatically return the link that you can use instead of us having to type those every single time. And it's kind of self-service, if you will. Let you be able to get stuff for yourself.
Yeah, it might take a little bit for Nightbot to completely show up, but it is live right now. All right, so some housekeeping. We are going to be using GitHub for our workshop here. All of the content that we're going to go through is actually on GitHub and on the repo. And if Nightbot's working, you can do !GitHub. If not, we can get a link copied for you in the chat if you wouldn't mind doing that, David.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, all the content that we're going to go through is on GitHub. We're also going to be using a cloud-based IDE called Gitpod. Now, this is basically just VS Code in the cloud, and it integrates really well with GitHub. So we'll be able to load up that repo that we're working in straight up into a cloud-based IDE and work on it directly. Really convenient, really easy. Makes sure that we can specify the environment that you're working in, just so that we don't have any weird issues with different environments. If you want to work locally, if you prefer that, you absolutely can. You're welcome to. We have a few notes at in the repo on some of the things that you'll need as far as like versions of Node and npm. We can't troubleshoot as well on the local version. So if you have any issues and you're working locally, our ability to troubleshoot things will be a little bit limited. We'll still try and help you, obviously, but oh, there's Nightbot. Cool.
Yeah, Nightbot finally woke up. Yeah.
So if you want to work locally, feel free to do so. Gitpod is a very easy to use IDE though. And if you're used to VS Code, you'll be very familiar with it. For our database, we are going to be using AstraDB. AstraDB is a NoSQL database as a service in the cloud based on Apache Cassandra. And it's a very versatile database, and we'll get into a few more details on that in a little bit. All right, so we offer badges for our workshops. This is the badge that you can receive if you complete the homework that we will do, or that we will specify for the workshop. Honestly, the homework is basically just going through the workshop, doing all the steps, and getting a screenshot of your successful app at the end. So if you would like to get a badge that you can use on social media, put on your LinkedIn profile and whatnot, feel free to look into that homework. We'll talk about it a little bit at the end as well, and complete it, submit it, and we'll grade it and issue a badge to you. And it's a really cool way to show off your continued learning. And we have a whole slew of badges that we offer for all of our workshops. So you can collect them all just like Pokemon.
You know, and we're almost at 2,300 badges now.
Are we really?
If you want
Holy
to push
cow.
us over, we're so close. If you want to push us over, go do your homework, get your badge, right? Sudeep, by the way, is also asking, is Gitpod a necessary tool? And as Ryan explained, so we provide it here as a nice kind of like, homogeneous way for everybody to experience the workshop in the same way without having to worry about troubleshooting people's local environments and such like that. Is it absolutely necessary? No, you could do this locally, but as he was saying, you're kind of more on your own if you're going to take the local route, because we can't really, validate whether or not you have certain libraries installed, things like that. So you could totally, if you're more advanced and you feel comfortable doing that and you're familiar with Vue and stuff, then by all means go for it. But the recommended way is to use Gitpod.
Yeah, Matthias asked, how long will this workshop take? We are scheduled for 2 hours.
Yep.
So we honestly, however long it'll take, obviously 2 hours is kind of our cutoff, but it might not take that long. We might be able to give you some time back, but feel free to ask questions and we'll answer them all the way to the end. All right. So this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to set up a few services right away. We're going to do our database setup and get our credentials for authenticating our database connection. Then we're going to introduce VueJS and talk about how VueJS works, set up our own component. We'll connect to our database. We'll be creating serverless functions. We'll talk a little bit about how those work. And then we'll talk about how to call those serverless functions from the front end. And then we'll have some resources at the end. So to get us started, I have a little demo for you for the app that we're going to build today. So if you go to this URL that you see, hootcards.io, and I'll go ahead and bring that up. This is what you should see. Let me pull this out. And this is going to be a little interactive portion. So we're going to play this game all together. It's a really simple app. Basically what you're going to do, you're enter your name and you're going to open a pack of cards and you're going to reveal those cards and see what cards you get. And then we can see what packs everyone has opened. So I'm going to go ahead, enter my name, open pack. So we have our pack of cards. We can flip them over, see if we get lucky. All right. So I got a bunch. I've got a common. I've got a few uncommon cards. I didn't get any rares or ultra rares, but let's see what you guys have opened so far. Okay, so lots of commons, lots of uncommons. See if anyone got lucky with a rare. There it is. We got a few rares. Congratulations, Dave and Zai. Oh, Banium got an ultra rare. Look at that.
I missed your link. To play the demo. I guess it's in the repo, isn't it?
It is in the repo. The link, if you need the link, it is in the GitHub repo. You can also type it in here, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in there.
So it looks like Venium got an ultra rare. Congratulations. AAA got 2 rares. We got a couple more rares. I'm gonna refresh the page. Oh, Filippo got all commons. That's pretty unlucky. I'm sorry, Filippo. You can always open a new pack if you refresh the page. Bertold got an ultra rare. Congratulations.
Ultra rare. Woo!
KD, another unfortunate all commons. So as you can see, it's a pretty simple game. We've got some rarities and cards, and we are randomly selecting these cards to create a pack and sending them to the front end. Renzo looks like got an ultra rare as well. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for giving that test. You can feel free to keep opening packs and try and get the ultra rare if you want, but I'm going to move on. And this is the app that we're going to build today. Too funny. I was the unfortunate one. Yeah, it is. It's not very common to get all commons, but David earlier got 2 ultra rares, which is unbelievably
I feel
lucky.
Particularly lucky right now. If anybody wants to gamble with me, just go ahead and wire me your money
Yeah. Akif asked if this is being recorded. Yes, all of our workshops are recorded. They'll be available at the same YouTube link after the workshop is over. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. We're going to start by creating our Astra database. Now, I just wanted to go over a little bit on how Astra works. So Astra is built on Apache Cassandra, which is a NoSQL database. It is known for its scalability and availability. It's very resilient to failures and maintaining access to your data in those events. But AstraDB is a service-based, cloud service-based database that we actually have created a data gateway to live on top of it that we call Stargate. And what this allows is for us to interact with our data through multiple different APIs, including REST APIs, GraphQL APIs, and document APIs, which is what we're going to be using today. And we have a few other APIs that are coming down the pipe as well. But it's a really good way, really easy way to interact with your data, so you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of using CQL commands or anything like that. You can just interact with it with APIs, which makes it super nice to use. So with that, let's go ahead and create our Astra instance. So if you go to the link, you can type in !Astra in the chat. You'll get a link to Astra. Yes, Devendra, yes, thank you for pointing that out. Astra is free. Is it's like a credit system. You get $25 credit every single month, and that's useful for what, 50 million reads, 5 million writes. It's basically enough to run a small or medium-sized business off of completely for free. So it's free to start. No credit card is needed to sign up. You won't be charged a thing. Once you reach that limit of that $25 credit, once you're getting close to that, it will prompt you to say, hey, you're using a lot of data. Do you want to continue and to pay for it beyond this? But yeah, absolutely free to sign up, free to start, no credit card. So
it should be pretty clear too when if you're creating your first account, it should be pretty clear in Astra. It'll say, you're on the free tier and such. And nowadays, funny enough, we could update the workshop repo. It's up to 80 gigabytes of storage for free, and many, many tens of millions of reads and writes. I mean, it's pretty substantial from that standpoint.
Yeah.
By the way, hey Ryan, Nightbot.
Yes.
I don't see Nightbot on for Discord.
Nightbot's not on for Discord?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I'm responding like I am Nightbot, okay. So I'm like handling it. But yeah, for some reason, it's not responding there. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Something I'll have to look into later.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, interesting. Bummer. So when you create your Astra account, you'll come to a page that kind of looks like this. You will probably have no databases, which is expected. But if you go to the top left, you'll see Create Database. I'm going to go ahead and click that. and we're going to create a database here, and you'll see how easy it is. We're going to use a few pre-populated names. So we're going to use Vue Workshop DB as the database name, and Vue Keyspace as the keyspace name. Now, what is a keyspace? A keyspace is a collection of tables. It's kind of like a schema if you're coming from a relational database world. It's just a collection of tables. You can select whatever provider you want via Google Cloud, Amazon, Azure, and you can select the region that is closest to you. Apparently, there's a new region, Central. I'm going to use that one because that is closest to me. But yeah, you can select whatever provider, whatever region you want, and it'll be fine. You click Create Database, and that's all you need to do. So as far as like the naming of the database, part of the code is pre-populated, and it expects a certain some of the commands that we'll have you run expects a certain name for your database and keyspace. You're absolutely free to change the name of your database and keyspace if you want. Just note that some of the commands that we'll be running expect a certain names, and you'll have to change those as well. Jerome asks, okay to use existing workshops DB with Vue Keyspace. Again, you technically can. Just make sure that the commands that we are pre-populated with the database name Vue Workshop DB, you'll have to change that to whatever database you're using. So for ease of use, we recommend using the names that we've specified, but if you feel confident that you'll catch the times you'll have to change it, you can go ahead.
And just something real quick, Ryan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sudeep in YouTube says, do we need to create a login for the cloud as well? No. You can pick any one of the major cloud providers, GCP, AWS, or Azure. Astra handles all of that for you. You do not need an account with the cloud providers or anything. So the point of that is to give you the ultimate flexibility and such. So no, you do not need a login. You don't need an account. You don't need to worry about being charged on one of the cloud providers. All of the stuff here is free.
Yep, thank you. So when you create your database, you'll see on the right-hand side, status will be pending for a little bit. It should only take a couple minutes before it'll turn to active. As you can see, mine just turned to active. The credits remaining for yours is different. Doesn't make any difference. No, mine is bumped up for a different reason. Yours should be around $25 if you just created the account. I think I was given some extra for something.
Yeah, that happened a couple months ago. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So that is basically it for creating your Astra account. Something else that we need to do, though, is we need to create a security token. So we need to create a token in order to authenticate our communication with the database. So to do that, it's really easy. Once your database is active, on the right-hand side, you can click this menu button, the ellipses menu, and you can click Generate a Token. And then you can select your role. So we're going to use a database administrator role. Now, this is mainly used for this workshop just so that we have all of the permissions that we need to set everything up. When creating a production application, you'll probably want to choose a more specific role that doesn't have so much power. But we're going to generate a token, and you'll see that it generates a few things. Now, we recommend downloading the token details. This will download a CSV file that has all this content. Because if you navigate away from this page, you cannot get back to this. Like, you will not be able to see your token anymore. So we recommend downloading your token details. If you do happen to lose your token, you can always generate a new one. There's no limit. So no worries about that. I'm going to leave this page up just for ease in copying it, but I did download the CSV as well. So we do recommend doing that. Your status is still pending.
Yeah, and Daniel and the Regolo, if it's still pending, that's totally cool. If you see pending or initializing, that's fine. You can still create your security token. And as Ryan said, it'll take just a couple of minutes to spin these up. You're actually spinning up a fully fledged Cassandra cluster when you create the database. So it could take like 5 minutes or something. That's fine.
Yeah. Now, a good point is that you can't access that ellipses menu when it's pending. So the other way to do it, to generate a token, is in the top left where you see current organization. Drop that down and go to organization settings. And then you'll see token management here. And that's where you can generate a token if you're still pending. But yeah, you can generate a token while it's still pending because the tokens are not database specific. It's account level, or organization level, I should say. All right. should I set up AstroDB during the session? Yes, if you'd like to follow along with everything that we're doing, yes. Set up the AstroDB. It should only take a couple minutes. All right. If you have, feel free to ask any questions if you're running into any issues. I'm going to go ahead and launch the Gitpod IDE, which is our next step, because this can take a little bit of time. So I want to get it done early. So in the GitHub repo, we have this link, open in Gitpod. If you right click it and open it in a new tab, it's ideal. So I'm going to open it in a new tab, drag it over to my bigger window. And this will take some time. It will probably ask you to log in with your GitHub account. There's a couple other options as well, but log in with your GitHub account on Gitpod, and then it'll load up the repo. Informative asks VueJS versus React.js benefits. They both do basically the same thing. They're both frameworks for generating UIs. They work in very similar ways, but they have different structures. Personally, I prefer React, but Vue is pretty popular as well. It's growing in popularity. Benefits, I don't know. I think it's a really personal preference. So, and
they definitely use different styles, right? There's
yes,
different,
very different.
You'll
styles.
see this as we go through, and maybe what we can do, Ryan, is you're actually going through the code, kind of. I know for those React folks that are familiar with that, kind of point out some of the differences there. I think if you're already used to using React and you've not used Vue before, the second you see this, you'll almost immediately see the differences in the layout and such.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they're doing very similar things. The big differences come from like the libraries that are available for each one, right? React has been around for a long time. It's very popular. It has a lot of libraries available. Vue is newer. But it is growing. And then the structure is really the thing. And if the structure for Vue is more like clicks with you better than React, great. React is my preferred one because it clicks with me better. Will this Gitpod instance save to somewhere, a fork of your repo, for example? No, it is a instance of the repo. It's pulling the repo into an instance, and then it'll live for a little bit, and then it'll get deleted at a certain point. This is just kind of a temporary thing. If you want to use Gitpod with your own repo, you can certainly work out of a specific repo and like push the code through Git. So it's kind of a really convenient IDE in general. So my Gitpod is taking a little bit, so yours might take a little while as well. We have a lot of people probably starting up Gitpods all at the same time, so we maybe should have warned them. Oh, Jason made a good point. You can pin the Gitpod instance if you don't want it to be deleted. So Shida asks, I'm in Gitpod, what do I do next? Create a new workspace. If you use the link that we provided in the GitHub repo, that should automatically create a workspace based on this repo. So make sure you use that link. All right. So mine is up. It's going to be installing a few things, some initialization. So that'll take a little bit. We'll wait for that. Ion asks, any preference, Vue versus React in terms of building native apps? That's a really good question. React is my preference. It has so if you've heard of React Native, it is a really good way of making native apps using React, and the structure is very similar. You'll use a few different tags basically that are more specific to native apps rather than web apps. So you're not going to be using HTML tags for your rendering output, but the rest of the structure will be very similar. We actually have a workshop that we did recently about converting a React web app to a React native app. That's really cool. And you can see how easy it is to go from one to the other. And you can also just run the web app off of the React Native code as well. So I would say React is probably further along in creating kind of dual purpose apps, both native and web. Simon says you can make mobile apps with native script and Vue. I actually didn't know that, so it's a good thing to look into.
Dude, Ryan, I can't believe you're in the regular light mode and not dark mode. I mean, come on.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Light mode shows up better on stream.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's the truth.
Fine.
Remy asks, how do I get the Gitpod IDE? Actually, so we actually have a link that can go straight there. I just remembered. But if you go to the GitHub repo and click on step 3, there's a button here. You can click on that. You can also click on the link that is showing up here, a Nightbot, Gitpod, Cloud IDE. That should get you straight there as well. All right. So mine is done. If everyone else, or if everyone who is basically to the point I am, Gitpod is up and running, it has installed everything, you have the terminal ready to go, give us a thumbs up in the chat just so we know we can move on. I know this step can take a little bit of time, but I'm glad that we can answer some questions as we're waiting.
Yeah, and there's been a couple folks that have asked, what are the commands that you run once Gitpod launches? We haven't quite gotten there yet. Right, it is in the repo though. So as Ryan is going to bring you through the repo instructions, you'll see as you go down that we'll start giving you commands. But before we do any commands, right, we actually have to start working with some of the code. So again, all the stuff, every command and everything you need is actually going to be in that repo. So if you do need that, and I'll put it in the chat, don't forget to do your bang GitHub, and then you can follow along.
Yeah, and I haven't typed anything in the terminal yet. So if you are, if you're just in Gitpod and you don't have this workspace open, make sure that you go to the GitHub repo and use this link, so that because it will automatically pull that workspace. So I haven't actually done anything in the terminal. It did a bunch of things automatically, and if you're working locally, those things are like npm install, which installs a bunch of dependency packages. And I think that's kind of it. That's making sure that the right version of Node is installed as well. Looks like we have a lot of thumbs up. So I'll go ahead and move on, and we can get started. All right. So let's start by taking a look at our app. Now, this app was built using Nuxt, which is a framework for Vue that really helps you get a jump start on creating a new app. Kind of gives you a bunch of boilerplate code for one. It also is a framework that does a lot of things in the back, like behind the scenes, that makes it really easy to just focus on the app experience rather than focusing on getting all these, all the nitty gritty details done. So like page routing, it handles completely on its own. Like you don't have to worry about any of the page routing. Styles, the whole setup process for a Nuxt app, it'll have you select different libraries that you want to use for styles or fetching protocols or anything, and all of those things are kind of baked in to the app, so that anytime that you want to use a custom style template, you just have to reference it, and it will automatically, when it builds, it will automatically pull those references as you need. So Nuxt is a really good way to kind of get a jump start and be able to focus on the app experience itself rather than some of the nitty gritty stuff. So that's why we have like a folder called .nuxt. It has a bunch of extra stuff. We're not really going to get into all of the details of Nuxt. I just wanted to preface that this was built using that. But we'll take a look at our pages. So right now we just have a single page. This will be a single page application. This is our index.view. This is our entry point into our app. This will be our home page, if you will. And so here we can take a look at what a Vue component looks like, because a page is basically just a component, right? So Vue components and Vue pages are broken down into 3 main sections. We have our template section, and this is where all of our HTML and our formatting happens. You can see we have several rows. These are pulled from the Vant style package that we installed with Nuxt. We don't have to reference this because Nuxt will figure it out for us, but this is how we use it. So we have several rows that we have things displayed on. So this is our template. This is where all of our HTML goes. Then we have our script section. This is where all our JavaScript will go, our logic, if you will. If I need to zoom in as well, let me know. I tried to make it pretty big.
I'd say pop a zoom like a couple.
All right. I'll pop a zoom.
Hits. Pop a zoom.
All right, that's one. That's one. Okay. Let me know if I need to go further. But we're getting to the limits of screen real estate.
Right.
And then we have our style section. This is our CSS, right? So it's every component, every Vue component is broken down into these three main sections. And this is pretty different from React. Just as a comparison, React is pretty much all JavaScript. And then you have a return statement out of your component that is your HTML, which it's technically JSX or something like that. But that's kind of where your template would normally go in React. Vue is different. It's broken down into these three sections. So this is the basic overview of what a component will look like. And we'll actually be building a simple component together. But I just wanted to give you kind of a overview of what that looks like. One thing to note, actually, is you'll see in the script tag, we have lang equals TS. So we are using TypeScript for our JavaScript sections. Vue 3, as of version 3, has native support for TypeScript. So all we have to do is implement this tag, and all of our TypeScript type checking will be enabled, and we'll be basically using TypeScript for the remainder of that script. So we can actually, utilize the TypeScript tag for any component that we want, and we can omit it for any component that we want if we don't want to use TypeScript for a certain reason or not. I don't know why you wouldn't, but it's an option. So that's basically how we specify to Vue, like we intend to be using TypeScript for this. All right. So as you can see, currently we have a few things. We have our data section in our Vue component, and we're returning an array called cards. And in this array, we have several objects where we have our rarity, our image URL. These are our cards, right? And so we have 5 of these because we're going to be returning 5 cards. So right now we are actually, in this iteration of this app, we are hard coding these cards. We're not dynamic at all. And the cards that are being used are specified here. We have our our rarity, our image URL. That's where we reference the picture of the owls. But we are actually, let me see. Okay. So the way that we instance the actual cards themselves is we're using this this for loop. So Vue has built-in methods for your template that you can use to instance like different sections of your template as you want. So v4 is basically a for loop. And so for each card in our cards array that we have in our data section, we're going to instance this card flip component and give it the data of that card, right? So that's what this does. So let's go ahead and take a look at our components and take a look at card flip. So we have our basic template here. This is essentially just our card that is able to flip around using CSS magic that we're not going to get into because it's essentially magic as far as I'm concerned. We have our card back, which is the back of our card, like the logo, the pink side of it. That's always going to be the same, so we can hard code that in just fine. We have our card front. That's going to be a component that we create together, and that's going to be determined, dynamically determined based on whatever data comes through from the card prop that we're sending through. And then here's our logic. It's pretty simple. I talked about props. So we can send in properties when we call a component. This is very similar to React if you're familiar with it. But we do have to define the properties that we expect in Vue. So in this case, we're defining a specific property called card that we're expecting. And the type is an object, right? We're using TypeScript. So we need to define that it's an object that we're expecting. And we have a default value of no rarity and an empty string for image URL, which actually this is mistyped. It doesn't really matter. And so when it first instantiates this prop, it's just going to be an empty prop. And then when we get that property sent into the component, it will update it.
Hey, Ryan, real quick. So,
Yes.
Hattery has a question here, and I thought this was actually pretty interesting. Can we use multiple scripting options, TypeScript and JavaScript, for different components on the same page? Is that possible? Do you know?
Yes, because TypeScript is a subset of JavaScript. So all JavaScript is valid TypeScript. So if you set your this tag that saying that you're using TypeScript, you could actually write the entire thing in just regular JavaScript, and it would work just fine. You would run into probably if you're doing some weird things with types, it'll flag it and saying, hey, you can't mutate this type. But there are ways to set the type to any so that you could use it as traditional JavaScript where it doesn't care about types. But at that point, I mean, why would you be using TypeScript?
Why would you be using TypeScript? That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
But there are instances where you might need that flexibility. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are instances where you might need that flexibility. So it does allow for it. But technically, you can code the entire thing in regular JavaScript, flag it as TypeScript, and it should work. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
TypeScript's
Actually, as a matter
superset
of
of
fact, I
JavaScript. Is that-
noticed. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
going to say, Shosun, I think, is correct there. It is a superset of JavaScript.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
misspoke. My apologies. All right, so we also have this data variable called flipped. That's basically just keeping track of our state, whether it's flipped or not. And then we have a method that flips the card. And that just changes the class for our CSS to flipped or not flipped to start that animation. All right, so let's go ahead and create our own Vue component. Now, this is going to be a pretty simple component. I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. I'm going to call it hootcard.vue. All right, and our template is going to be really simple. And I'm actually just going to copy it out of the GitHub repo just for simplicity's sake and typo issues. But our template's really simple. All we're doing is displaying an image, basically, right? Because we already have the card component that flips around. We just need to dynamically populate that image. And so we have our div that's going to have a dynamic, a class of card, which we'll define later in our style section, and then a dynamic class that is based on the rarity. So what this is going to do is, depending on the property that's coming in that determines its rarity, the class is going to be specified by that value, right? And so we'll have different classes for the different rarities: common, uncommon, rare, and ultra rare. But that's going to be, so we're not, we don't have to hard code what it is, or we don't have to make a bunch of options. It's just going to be determined by whatever the value of that property that comes in. Same thing with the image. We have an owl class that we'll define in the style, and then our source is going to be a dynamic based on the image URL property that comes in as well. Pretty simple template. In our script section, I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to copy. This is basically boilerplate. Actually, if you do type it out, it actually gives you this IntelliSense stuff. So I can actually select TypeScript, and it automatically populates a bunch of stuff for me. So you can do that as well. I like to use semicolons.
Do you happen to know whether or not we can use less CSS with Vue as well? That's a question from Animesh in YouTube.
I am sure that you can. I am not as familiar with less or Sass, so I can't give like specific advice, I guess. Can you use Tailwind CSS? Yeah, you can. Yeah, Tailwind CSS is basically a library for styles. Actually, I think it might be one of the options when you set up the project in Nuxt. I think Tailwind is one of the options, actually. Devendra asked class versus class. Yes. So in Vue, when you have the semicolon in front of a value like this, it means that it's a, for lack of a better term, a dynamic value. So, you know, when we say class equals card, this is going to look in our style section for a CSS entry that says .card, right? So it knows exactly where to look. When we have the semicolon in front of it, or the colon in front of it, it's not going to look in the styles for rarity. It's going to look for a data variable that we're going to define called rarity and substitute that in before it assigns it to the class section here. So when we have a data, what does it look like? So we're going to have a rarity variable here. Did I type that right? I'm getting ahead of myself. This part right here. So we need to return. So we're returning some certain data variables that we want to use in our template. So that's what this data section is for in our view component. And so when we return a variable called rarity, we can set it to whatever we want. So we could say common, if I could type. So now common is going to be substituted here because we're looking for a data variable called rarity. And that's what this colon signifies. Hopefully that answers it. Yes, Daniel answered it correctly. One is dynamic, the other is not. So this is static. We are hard coding it. This is dynamic based on the data variable that we're looking for. Cool. And this is one of the weird, like it's a specific syntax unique to Vue, and so it's a little bit of a learning curve. Once you learn it and once you get used to it, it'll make sense. But it doesn't really have a like good comparison to something else, right? React does not do it this way. So it is a little bit of a learning curve. All right, let me go back. All right, so let's think about a little bit what we're going to do here. We're going to be receiving a card object, right? Because we're passing in, we're dealing with that card object from that array, right? So this is the hard-coded array for our reference. We're looking, rarity order is used for ordering it in the pack. We don't actually have to worry about that. We're really only worried about the rarity and the image URL. So we're actually going to be expecting a prop passed into this component. So we need to define that in Vue. We need to define what props we're expecting. So we know it's going to be an object that contains at least rarity and image URL. And so this is the code. I'm just going to go ahead and like copy it over. And this is how we define the props that we're expecting. So we need to, we have our props section here. We need to name our prop. So we're expecting a prop called card. And it's going to be a type object. And then we have a default value. So this is actually exactly the same as the card flip. We're just passing that object down the line to the child components. But we do need to define what we're expecting, because then otherwise Vue doesn't know what to look for. But now we have the properties passed in, right? We have this object, this card object that's ready to use. We can't actually use it in our template yet because we need to define those data variables that the template can use. And to do that, we have a data section, right? So that's this part right here. So just for ease, I'm going to copy the whole thing. So now we've got our props. We are importing them just fine. Now we have our data section, and we're returning two variables that we want to use in our template, rarity and image URL. And we're just assigning that to our card property, which is an object. And we're assigning the rarity property from that to our rarity variable. And we have we have to do a local reference using this. And so that just signifies that we're referring to this card object. Massimiliano asks, why do you need the data? So the data section opens up the variables that you want to use in the template. Now, could you use the props directly in the template? It's possible. That is how like React works. You can just use the props. This is the best practice to ensure that you're using the correct values that you're expecting. Can you use the properties directly? Maybe we can experiment with that. I think it might be possible in the latest version of Vue, in Vue 3, which is relatively recent, that we can use the properties directly. But this is a kind of a best practice to use the data section. But we can maybe experiment it in a little bit. The reglo data should be like local variables of the component. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Props come from outside the component that we're passing in. Data is the local variables that we're using. Yeah, so if you wanted to use the props, if it works, you could do card.rarity. You might have to do this .card.rarity, and that actually might be the problem. I'm not sure. We can do experiments and see. I'd be interested as well. All right. So that's actually pretty much it for our logic part. We're just importing information, and we're dynamically changing the class and the image source based on that information. So now we have to do our style section. I'm going to go ahead and copy this out. So in our styles, we have our CSS. It's pretty simple. We have our card, which just makes sure that we have the right shape for our card, using the border radius and whatnot. Then we have our class styles, right? We have our ultra rare, rare, uncommon, and common. And this determines the colors. And then for our rare and our ultra rare, we have those shadows that kind of make it look like it's glowing. Pretty simple. And then for our owl, this is what is used, our CSS, for positioning that image on the card itself, making sure that it's centered and everything. So pretty simple CSS. So you can go ahead and save that. I think it auto saves. Now that we finished this component, we need to use it in our card flip component. So I'm going to go back to card flip, and we need to use that new component here. Now with Nuxt, we actually can just reference it right away, like this. Without Nuxt, you'd have to import it and then import it here and then export the component here. Nuxt handles all that for us, so it's super easy. Where can you find the CSS code? All the code is on the GitHub repo. You can see that under this step we have all the styles here.
Hey, Ryan, question for
Yep.
you. And I actually saw this one come in a couple times, but the last one here is from Gleefully Chill over in Discord. Does Vue support functional structure, or is it purely class structure? And I realized I didn't know the answer to that to myself. I know it for React, but
Yeah. I would argue that this is functional. I don't know, maybe you would disagree. It is a slightly unique structure, I will say. I don't know how to answer that, really. The best way I can answer it is that Vue has a pretty unique structure. You know, we're not defining a specific function for our as our component. We are defining certain life cycle methods. Actually, these aren't even life cycle methods, are they? Different properties for our component that are then used in our template. I don't know that really has a apples to apples comparison to functional versus class.
you know, interesting. I'm now, mind you, I am not a Vue expert here, right? You know, from this standpoint. You know, but I'm doing some Google searches, and the most of what I'm seeing does reference VueJS functional components, but there seems to be some information about classes, class components in Vue are no longer happening, and I'm just kind of reading up to see if maybe something got deprecated or what. I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that either. I wish I did. I'm going to go ahead and finish this import before I lose my place. So in order to import this component, we are going to pass in the property that we're expecting, right? So we're expecting a card property. So we're going to signify that with a colon. We're going to name it card. And then we're going to import the card object. And then we can close that out. Oops. So in this case, we are just passing in the property that's coming into card flip. We're just passing it on to the component here. All right. So that should be saved. And now we can actually go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. So we can npm run dev in the terminal. And this will open a preview browser in Gitpod. Actually, I'm going to say no to the telemetry. So it's going to open a preview browser. It's going to load a few things, so it'll be not found for a little bit, and then it'll refresh once it's done. Make this a little bit bigger. All right, and so we can see our app, and our cards have generated, and I can go ahead and flip. And these will be our hard-coded cards, right? So we've got the 2 commons, we have the ultra rare. And these are the cards that are referenced in our main page, our index page. And if I just click open another pack, which just refreshes the page, it will be the same cards. So there we go. We have our app is all up and running. You can see our custom component that we just wrote that shows like the dynamic background, and the image is all working correctly. So actually, with that, let's test out this. Do a little experimentation. What do you think? So if I change this to card.rarity, card.image URL, yeah, it does work. All right, so you can actually reference the props directly. You don't have to use the data section. So the data section might be a legacy best practice. It's also might be a necessary practice when you get into more complicated things, data structures, because this is a fairly simple structure that we're working with. Dana says, my cards only show the box shadow, nothing inside. So make sure that your class is correct, your rarity image URL. Are you getting the correct colors? Because if you're getting the correct colors, then the rarity should be fine. Your image URL might not be coming through. Oh yeah, Simon, that's a good point. Yes. You need the data if you want to alter the values. Thank you. Yeah, so just like I used a data value for our state, where we're going between flipped is true or false. If you want to mutate this data in any way, you do need to have it as a data value. You cannot mutate the props. Yes, thank you. If you're not mutating the props, if you're not mutating that data, then you can use the props directly. It looks like. Daniel, looks like you fixed it. Awesome. Tarek, did you create the hoot card component? Because we actually created that together. It does not come in the repo when you first started up. All of that code is in the GitHub repo, and you can copy it over directly.
You know, Ryan, I'm wondering, and I can't tell what this person's name is. Okay, so I have someone I'm talking to in Discord
Mhm.
that, and I saw a couple people I thought on YouTube that maybe when they launched their app, it did not auto open the preview pane. And so they may
Oh,
be having difficulty showing it. Would you show them where the ports are and how to launch their Gitpod endpoint to the right place?
yes. Okay, so if your simple browser doesn't automatically open, which it should, on the bottom of Gitpod, you'll see this ports, and right now it's saying 3000 because this is the open port, and this is as long as you've already executed npm run dev, right? You can click on that. You click on that ports, it'll open up this this window on the left side, and 3000 should be green and it should be open because it's running. And you can click on the open preview button, which is the middle. That should open the simple browser. You can also open the browser, which will open a new tab that also opens it kind of in a larger format. So that will hopefully get you there. If your preview browser does not open automatically, that is how you do it. Kamar, yes, this workshop is recorded and will be available at the same YouTube link after the workshop. Devendra fixed it was a typo in HootCard component. Awesome. Glad you figured it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say the times where when I've gone through it, if I didn't get the cards rendering properly, it's usually because I fat fingered something in the code.
Yeah. The ports option on the bottom right of Gitpod. Oh, actually, hold on. David, your head is in the way.
Oh, no one can see. Yeah.
No one can see
But
it.
if
All
you,
right.
while he's moving my head, while he moves me, if you look at the very, very bottom right of your Gitpod, you should see a little tiny strip, and you're going to see like 3000, 8888, so on and so forth. Just click there. It'll open up a port dialog, and from there you can get access to your ports and launch them to the preview pane. Oh, yeah. See, he made me disappear. So now you guys can see it. There you go.
All right. Sorry about that. I didn't notice that David's head was in the way. Dun, dun, dun. All right.
I know, it's my fault, Daniel, totally. My head's just too big, right in the way.
All right, let me turn you back on.
Now, don't forget, by the way, if you've gotten to a certain point when you're following along with Ryan, but for some reason the cards aren't rendering properly or something like that, notice that in the GitHub repo, he does give you the completed version, right, of each of the sections. So maybe there's a slight typo or something's been missed. So make sure that if you're not entirely sure, just go grab the finished versions that are in the repository step, and then paste those over what you have.
Matthias says, does it work? For me, it does not if the data part is missing. If you remove the data part, and I would recommend, just for simplicity's sake, just follow what's in the repo. There are other options, I guess. But if you remove the data, you do need to reference the card property up here in the template. But I would recommend just following the repo. Use the data section. It is best practice and allows you to change the values if you want to. Okay. Oh, hoot card. Someone said the hoot card, this part was not working for them. Why was it not working? I mean, what you typed looks right. I'm not sure why it wouldn't work. Make sure that you put it in the card flip component underneath where the card component here comment is. That's where it goes. If you're working locally and you have not run npm install, you do need Nuxt, the Nuxt stuff to be installed, because that is required for it to auto import all the components that it needs. Yep, spelling does matter. Nicodemus, we do not need to import the HootCard component first because we are using Nuxt framework, which will automatically do that when it builds, which is super nice. which version of Vue is Nux using? It's using Vue 3. Should be using Vue 3. Cool. Shivan, looks like it's all working for you. Still no owls on cards. Let's see if I can find.
Don't forget, if I remember, isn't this the spot do they need to remove? They need to remove the hard-coded values, or am I getting ahead of myself?
You are getting ahead of yourself. Yeah, we're still working with
Okay.
hard-coded values. So just make sure that, okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to go back to the normal way of doing it. So we're still working with the data values. We're not going to do the importing or utilizing the props directly. We're going to import them. So make sure that the image URL, make sure that your template looks like this in the hoot card component. And then make sure you're defining your prop correctly. You're expecting a card prop. You need to specify the type. And you do need to give it a default value. And then you return your data values and make sure everything's spelled correctly.
Yeah, case is important for sure.
Yeah, it was spelling. Image URL, yeah, it has to be all capitalized. As long as it's all consistent, it's fine. But
right,
yeah,
right.
You do. All right. Go back to here. I'm gonna just check something real quick. Okay. All right. So this is all working, which is great, but it is hard coded still, right? We're dealing with dynamic cards at all, right? They're always going to be the same. So we want it to be dynamic. I'm going to go ahead and in the terminal hit Control C to stop the service. I'm going to go ahead and close that browser. And we're going to make this dynamic. So in order to make it dynamic, we need to have a few things. We need to have our database that has all of our card options in it. We need to have a connection to that database. We need to have some serverless functions that do a little bit of work to give us randomly select our 5 cards, create that pack, and send it to the front end. And so that's what we're going to do now. So we need to do a few things to connect to our database. We're going to run Astra Setup first, which is a tool that allows you to very easily connect to a specific database in Astra. We're going to install the library Astra.js collections, which is the document API library to communicate with our database. We're going to create a backend utility function called Astra Client that will connect to our Astra database using all the credentials and generate and connect to the specific document collection that we want to use. And then we're going to use Netlify CLI to give ourselves a environment that emulates Netlify. Now, what is Netlify? I didn't talk about this earlier. I probably should have. Netlify is a global CDN, content delivery network, that is a really good hosting solution. We're not going to be hosting this publicly right now, but it also provides a backend for our app that hosts serverless functions. So we can define our serverless functions, and it will dynamically create endpoints based on those functions and stand up a backend for us so that we don't have to worry about backend infrastructure at all. So really easy to use, really convenient. Netlify CLI allows us to run that environment locally so that we don't have to run it publicly yet. So first things first, let's run Astra Setup. Now, if you use a different database name, you'll have to change things here. If you use a different key space name, you'll have to change things here. Hopefully you use the default ones and you can just copy this over and run it. And you'll have to click allow to allow copying into GitHub. Now it's going to ask you for your token here, the token that we generated. Now, if you still have this window open, you can copy it. It's the last one here. It's under token. If you don't have this window open, hopefully you downloaded the CSV. If you did not, feel free to generate another token. does not really matter. What is a key
Yeah,
space?
something interesting, Ryan. I've got a couple folks in Discord that they are running the server. It's up. They're showing me screenshots and everything, but Gitpod is actually not showing them the port dialog. So, and it didn't automatically launch, and I'm trying to track down why that might be. But I will give them a command to do GP preview so they can do it that way.
Okay, sounds good. That's interesting.
It is.
So I'm going to go ahead and paste that token in here. And it'll do its thing. It'll look for the database, look for the key space, and get everything set up. Now, someone asked, what is a key space? Key space is a collection of tables. It's very similar to a schema if you're familiar with relational world, or a namespace sometimes is called a namespace. It's just a collection of tables. In this case, it's going to be a collection of document collections, but that's what a key space is. Someone asked about the CLI. Explain the CLI again. So Netlify is a CDN that we are going to utilize to host serverless functions rather than create our own backend, because we don't really need to create a very complex backend for this app. And so I don't want to have to worry about the backend infrastructure at all. So Netlify will do that for us and dynamically create endpoints for the serverless functions that we create. And we'll get into what serverless functions are in a little bit. The CLI is a local tool that that creates a dev environment that emulates that live environment. So it will provide us serverless functions and stuff all locally rather than doing it publicly on their servers. Yes, run Astra setup in Gitpod. Yep, and you can just copy this line over to your terminal, and it should run. Okay. So what does Astra setup do? I wanted to touch on this. Astra setup will create a file called .env. This is for your environment variables. Let's take a look at that. I'm just going to open it here. So it populates this environment variable file, and it has your admin token, your application token, which are actually identical, your DB ID, so that's the ID of the database that you connected to, the region, and the key space, and then also a GraphQL endpoint if we were using the GraphQL API, which we're not. But this is all the information that you need to connect to your database. But this is also very sensitive information. You don't want this to get out to the public, because then anyone can connect to your database and be authenticated and do whatever they want. So the reason that we store these in environment variables is these environment variables will not be committed to any GitHub repo, and they are kind of isolated in a way that we can reference in the app itself, but they're not like just stored in like JavaScript that would be exposed to the front end or anything like that. They're isolated.
Right.
So when we host this publicly, if you wanted to host this publicly, these environment variables need to be provided to whatever hosting solution you have. So because we're using Netlify, we would be using Netlify to host it. We need to provide Netlify with these environment variables, but they will be storing them isolated as well. But it's just a way to keep things private.
Yeah, and BPOT, and what kind of security concerns when it comes to any kind of your security tokens? Yeah, as Ryan just said, you never want to store those out in the open. You don't want to put them in your GitHub repos. You don't want to make them publicly accessible anywhere, because that token gives you access to your database, right? So,
yep.
Especially the ones we created were database administrator tokens, which is like, here, have everything, right? So yeah, you just make sure you never share those out.
Yeah, don't take screenshots. Don't stream a workshop that shows it. We delete these afterwards, obviously. Okay, so that's what Astra Setup does. It just makes it it's a really easy tool to generate that .env without having to copy paste a bunch of stuff. This is all information that you can get from your Astra dashboard on the website, but Astra Setup is just a tool that makes it easy. So next we need to install the Astra.js collections. So Astra.js collections is the library that we'll use to utilize the document API when connecting to our AstraDB. So we just ran that. And we'll talk about how that works in a little bit. Actually, we'll talk about it right now because we're going to create the Astra client file, and we're actually going to create that together. So Netlify, both Netlify CDN and the CLI that we're using for local development is going to be looking for a folder called functions. Now we've actually defined this in the netlify.toml, which is a configuration file. But it's by default, it's going to look for a folder called functions. And then any JavaScript function in that folder is considered a serverless function, and it will dynamically create an endpoint that we can hit from the front end that will execute this function and deliver back the results. So I have one already. We'll be making one together. This is upload cards. This is what we'll be using to upload the cards, the collection of cards to the database so that we can use them. But we also have some utility functions that we need to utilize, and one that we need to create. Namely, we need to create the Astra client, which is how we connect to the database in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead and create the file astraclient.js. And this is what we're going to be creating. Now you can just copy this. This is a complete file already. You can just copy this out of GitHub. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to walk you through what each section is for. It's pretty simple. It might look complicated, but it's not. So first things, we are importing the create client method from our Astra.js collections library. This is just a method that's provided in the library that allows us to create the client, which is basically the connection to the database. And then we are creating an instance of client called Astra client. And then we have a method that's called get Astra client, and it's going to check if our instance is null. So if the client doesn't already exist, we're going to do this stuff. If it does exist, we'll just return the existing client. And then we're going to use that method that we imported called create client, and we need to provide it a few things. We need to provide it the database ID, which we have stored in our environment variable, right? Because we imported that already. And this is how we reference it, process.env. Whatever the name of your environment variable is. We need the database ID, we need the database region, and we need our application token to authenticate that all of this is a valid request. So those are the three things that are needed to create this connection to the database. And then we have a wait, just a 30-second wait to give it time. Like hopefully it's immediate. Usually it is, but just to kind of have an opportunity for any delays to go through and have it not fail. So that's kind of a universal method that you would use anytime you want to connect to an AstraDB in any application you use. This is what you would use. So you can actually use this in any application you want. Then we have a method called get collection, and this is how we both create and acquire the collection that we're going to be using. And our collection is just a group of documents, and a document is essentially a JSON object that we're saving to the database. The collection is kind of a logical group of those documents. And so what this is doing is we are creating an instance of our client, right? So we're executing that get Astra client method, and then our client dot namespace, and we're providing it the key space name. So in this case, namespace and key space are interchangeable, the same thing. We're providing it the key space name, which is saved in our environment variables. And then dot collection, and we're giving it the name of the collection that we want. Now, this collection doesn't exist yet. If it doesn't exist and it receives a request, it will automatically create a collection with that name. And if it does exist, it will just return that collection that is named here. So we are creating and using a collection called cards. And then we're exporting these two methods so that we can use them in other files. Hopefully that makes sense. It's pretty simple. Harik Rishnan, sorry if I butchered your name. Your question is all the backend functions also being handled by Vue? No, Vue is a front-end framework. All of this is just plain JavaScript right now. Okay. So this is our Astra client utility. This is what we're going to be using in all of our serverless functions. And now we're going to install the Netlify CLI by executing this command. Again, the CLI is a local tool to set up a local environment that emulates what the Netlify environment will do if we were to host this live. It provides the dynamic backend that serves up the dynamic endpoints for our serverless functions and allows us to use those as if they were online. Does it return all the records present in the collection if the collection exists? So all we're doing is creating a reference to that collection right now. We're actually not doing anything to it yet. That's what we're going to do in the serverless functions. So let's create our serverless function. And this is going to be our get cards. So we are, this is the function that we're going to hit when we want to get our new pack of cards, right? We've just refreshed the page. We want our 5 cards. This is the function that we're going to hit. So in our functions folder, because it needs to be on the root of the folder, we're going to create a new file called getcards.js. Devendra, I think this Astra client stuff is very generic. Is a very generic requirement. Should have been provided by Astra by default. This is definitely something that you can take and use everywhere. The one thing that is definitely dynamic is the collection and the collection name. You know, you need to define what collection you want to use, and you can actually define multiple. Like you can make this a little bit more dynamic by providing a variable here so that you can connect to whatever collection that you want. So it isn't. It is a slightly bespoke. It's not. There are some definitely some universal uses. Like this could be used in any application. But there are some things that you need to specify. But I mean, good point. I mean, maybe that is something that we could think about providing a jump start on. But I do think it's important to know how it connects. Okay. Yes, Devendra, that's exactly what I was saying. You could provide that parameter. Okay, so we're creating a new serverless function. And so the basic layout for a serverless function, I'm going to go ahead and copy this over, is this. So we have the exports.handler, async function, and then a return value. So this is a very basic serverless function. All it's going to do is say, let's return a 200. Yes, you executed me, right? So when Netlify looks in this folder for these files, it's going to see this. It's going to say, hey, this is a serverless function that I need to provide an endpoint to, and this is the function that I'm going to execute when this endpoint is hit. And obviously this is super simple. It's just a return status code with no body, just an empty body. Basically a simple
something I'd like to
boilerplate.
point out real quick about the serverless function here too, Netlify, because I did see some questions on this, asking like, how are you doing the backend, right? So that's the code that Ryan's just about to fill out. What's really cool about this, and one of the reasons why we use the Netlify libraries and such like that, we're not doing it. And I'm just giving you a little bit of a side information. We're not pushing this to like a global CDN or anything like you could do with the Netlify service itself. But if you were to, then this code that you are all going to kind of like fill out now and implement with your serverless function up on Netlify actually gets deployed as an AWS Lambda function, but Netlify does that all for you. So for any of you here, like serverless functions, what are these? How do I build them? Oh my God, this AWS stuff is a little much to get into. You're actually starting to work that out right now. And if you were to take the end result of this and then you push it up to Netlify, you would actually be pushing a Lambda function. So it's really cool that functionality is here because it really simplifies the whole process. And you don't need like an AWS account or anything. You can do it through Netlify and you can do it for free.
Yeah, it's a good intro to using those for sure. All right, so we'll break down a little bit what this function is going to do. First off, we want to retrieve all the cards from our database that we have stored there. We want to randomly select 5 of them based on their rarity, right? And then we're going to create a pack out of those 5 and send that pack as an array to the front end, right? So that it can use it just like we have our hard-coded array. So those are the steps that we're going to do. So first, we need to import a few things to this file. We're going to import 2 things. First, we need to import the get collection from our Astra client, so that we can reference the correct collection where all of our cards are going to be stored. And then we're going to import a helper function that I've provided already, and we can take a look at it, called pack builder. And we'll take a look at what that is. First, I'm going to import this line and just put it right up here. All right, let's take a real quick look at pack builder. So this is, we won't dive too deep, but basically this is how we determine the rarity or the probability of selecting a certain rarity, right? So we have our common, which is going to be used all the time. Like it's the most common. It's going to fill in anything that's not selected. Our uncommon has a chance of 45, rare is 10, ultra rare is 3. This is just how we determine the rarities. Then it has a function that picks a random rarity, and then, which is a bunch of math stuff, and then it's going to create the pack, right? So it's going to take the source deck, which is going to be all of our cards, right? So we're going to send the pack builder just the full collection of our cards, and it's going to create a pack out of them by iterating through 5 times, because we want 5 cards. It's going to randomly select a card from our deck. It's going to select a rarity based on the probability of that rarity. And then it's going to check if the card that it's selected is the same as the rarity that it's selected. And if so, it's going to push that card to our deck and then create, return this deck. And then we're using dynamic sort, which is another helper thing that just orders them in the correct order so that we have common to ultra rare. So that's all the pack builder does. It takes the full selection of cards and randomly selects 5 of them based on rarity and creates a pack out of them. So you can dive deeper into that if you want to know how that works, but just know that it exists already. Okay, so we've imported those 2 things that we need. So first things that we need to do in our actual function is we need to get a reference to our collection, right? So we're going to use this line, which just creates a reference called collection to our get collection. So it's going to execute the get collection. It's going to get that card collection, and we can use the reference for that. So we're going to put that right there. So now we have a reference to it that we can do some work on. And we also need to wrap the rest of our stuff in a try block. Because if we run into errors, we don't want the whole server to crash. Right? That wouldn't be good. Actually, I'm just going to copy. I'm going to copy all this.
I like crashing servers. Let's crash a server.
I've crashed many servers. So we're just wrapping this in a try block. So if it succeeds, we're gonna send back 200 saying yes, I succeeded. Here's the body, which right now is just empty. If it errors, it's going to save that error to the error console, and it's going to send back a 500 saying something happened. Everything failed. So that's basically, so that will let it gracefully fail so that the server doesn't crash every time something happens, because things will happen. Now we can actually work with the document API. Now the document API provides a lot of different methods that we can use. I'll talk briefly about 3 of them. We're only going to use 1 of them. So create is for inserting documents into the collection. So we have our cards collection. If we want to insert a card, we would use the create method. If we want to update one of those cards, we would use the update method for any editing or updates that we want. And then if we want to retrieve documents, we use the find method. So that's the one that we're going to use. So we're going to use this line right here. So we're defining a constant called res or result, and it's going to await this execution, which is the find method on the collection that we defined, which is our cards. And the empty object is basically says, give me everything. Give me all of the entries, all the documents from this collection, which will be all the cards. All right. I'm gonna put that there. Actually, that needs to go in the try block. My bad.
Oh, and Sixit over on YouTube is asking, can we upload files to Astra? Yes, you can upload files in like binary formats and such like that. You can do it. I would just say a lot of times it depends on what you're doing. The answer is yes, and you can upload pretty large files, but another convention to use, let's say they're media files, videos, or something like that, is to actually put the actual binary files themselves somewhere else, like S3 or whatever, and then have the lookup information in your table, and then use another service to actually hold all those files. Because then otherwise, unless you have a really, really good reason that you're maybe doing some analysis on them or you're doing something with them, now you're just storing all of those bits in the database. When you can do that, I'd say more efficiently somewhere else. So yes, you can totally do that. But there are other ways you can go about it too.
Yeah, and that's technically what I'm doing. I'm using Imager to host the pictures, but it is essentially the same as if I was using something like S3. Obviously, I don't need to use S3 for pictures, for like a dozen of them. So that's why I'm using Imager. But yes, it's a really good point. If you have like large files, like, Netflix uses Cassandra. I doubt that they store their files on the database. They probably have, actual.
Interestingly enough, I actually know of one case down in South America, a company that they in fact stored. This was really cool. It was a streaming service, and they stored all the video files and everything in Cassandra, but didn't store them as one big long thing. They actually cut them up, and they got spread around. And when you streamed, it automatically pieced it all together. And they did it in such a way, it scaled wonderfully and everything like that. But they had a particular reason why they actually wanted to store the stuff inside the database, and they devised a methodology to split them up into essentially splice them and such like that. So you could do it, you could totally do it, right? But again, it might be better to just store a pointer in the database itself and then put the file somewhere else. Yeah, it depends on your requirements, really.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So we are collecting. We're using the find method on our collection to get all of our documents from that collection, which will be all of our cards. Now we're going to use this line to create a pack out of that, out of those cards. Now, this is pretty crazy, right? So all this line is doing is using some built-in methods for the object and array. So we have keys, which is for the objects type, and the map is for an array type. All this is doing, so basically when we retrieve documents from our collection, it's going to come with a automatically generated document ID. And that's something that the database generates when you create a document or you send a document up. You can actually define that yourself as well if you want to. But it's going to come with this document ID. I don't care about that ID, and it's actually formatting the information I get back in an odd way, in a way that I don't want. So all this is doing is taking that data that's coming back, removing that document ID, and reformatting it to be card, all in an array, right? This is just formatting that information that we're getting back into the format that I want. And getting rid of that document ID that I don't care about. So kind of complicated when you see it all in one line, but it's not that difficult. So we're defining our variable pack equals to the result of the pack builder. So it's going to take all of our cards, create that pack of 5 randomly selected cards, send it back, and so that now we have our pack that we can send back to the front end. Okay.
By the way, Ryan, there is a fun question from Gleefully Chilly, or I'm sorry, Gleefully Chill. There's no I at the end of that. In Discord. And I'm actually answering a different question, so I didn't know if there was a particular reason why you use one over the other per his question.
Using require rather than import. So it's a different syntax, and I'm fairly certain that the Node version we're using does not support ES6 syntax, which would be that import get collection. Right. So for those of you who are not on Discord, the question is, why are we using this line, const get collection equals require that file over something like import get collection from the file, like we would do in here, right? We're using that ES6 syntax in our front end because we have tools on the front end that translate that syntax into the syntax that the node server recognizes. We don't have those tools for the backend side of things, and so the ES6 syntax isn't always supported, and so this is a more legacy way to do it. That's the best answer I can give you about that. I would love to use the import syntax. It's much better in my opinion, but you can run into issues pretty quickly by doing that. Okay, so now that we have our pack, we can actually send it to the front end by including it in our body. So we're just going to do JSON stringify, and then we're going to add our pack here. So this is just serializing that information and sending it to the front end where it can be received. All right. And that's pretty much it. If you want to, this is in the repo, this is the full file. So if I know we built it up part by part, if you want to make sure that everything is correct, you can just copy all of this content over. Typos happen. You gotta be careful. All right, so that is our serverless function. Now there's already a serverless function included. This is for uploading all the cards to the database. We will be using that shortly. But that should be pretty much it. We need to now call this serverless function from the front end and use this dynamically generated data rather than using the hard-coded data, right? So let's go back to our index page, right? This is where index.view, so pages index.view. This is where we are receiving our data. So right now it's all hard-coded, but we need to fetch that data now. We need to import a new library. This may or may not be required. I think Nuxt probably does this for us, but just to make sure, we're going to import Axios, which is a library for making API calls. Really useful. JavaScript technically has a built-in method called fetch. Axios kind of gives you a bit more ability to do certain things, and the syntax is nicer in my opinion. So we're using Axios. I think Nuxt is set up to use it automatically though. And now we need to implement a fetch method in our component. So first things first, we're not using the hard-coded cards anymore. So let's get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of all this hard-coded nonsense. If I can highlight it. Okay, so now we need to initialize an empty array. So we need to make sure that this data point, this data variable is available, right? But it'll start out as an empty array. But now we need to implement a new method in our Vue component. It'll be an async method because we're fetching data. And it's called the fetch method. This is a built-in method for Vue. And in here, we are going to define, we're going to assign this.cards, which is our data variable, right? The new information that we're going to get from executing this part. So I'm actually just going to copy this. Oops, did I go backwards? Okay. I'm going to copy this over so I don't mistype anything. So we're assigning the cards variable the result of this, which is how we execute or how we hit that endpoint, right? So Axios is our API library. It has a get method, and we're providing it the URL. This is the URL that we use for all of our serverless functions, right? So .netlify, because netlify is what is providing these functions, /functions where those functions are held, and get cards is the name of that file that we created, right? And then once it executes that, it's going to get the result and isolate the data part of that result, right? Because the result will have the status code and then the data, and we just want the data part.
And this gets into something what Ryan just showed there in line 40 when he highlighted the slash.netlify functions get cards. This gets into a question that Ion was asking, our friend Ion, about how do you generate the endpoint for that, right? And when using netlify serverless functions, well, the first part of it there, right, is the .netlify. So that tells it, okay, I want to go to my serverless functions. The functions directory, right, that's coming from our netlify toml. So when we're using netlify in your netlify toml, you identify what directory you want your serverless functions to go into. I think Ryan's going there now. Yep. See, functions equals functions. So we're just saying, I want my serverless functions in the functions directory. So if we go then back to our app, you'll see the functions directory, any one of the functions that are in there. Right now you have get cards and upload cards. They're all then accessible as endpoints. So if I were to go to .netlify /function/get cards or /upload cards, either one of those would be accessible. And so you just pretty much anything you drop into whatever your functions directory is, then those will just be accessible at the .netlify whatever endpoint.
All right. Okay, so this is what the script section of index.vue should look like now. We've removed the hard-coded stuff. We're dynamically assigning that cards array with information that we're getting from the database. And so we should be good to go. And so we should be able to launch the app now. So we're going to launch it a different way because we need to, again, create this environment that emulates Netlify's environment. So we're going to use Netlify dev, which is part of that CLI that we installed. Wait for it a little bit. All right, and this is what you should see. Now, you're not going to have any cards because we don't have any cards in the database. We have not uploaded those yet. So the way that we're going to do that is in your terminal section, if you drop this down and select split, and you can select bash default. There's other places that you can do this. You can go up to the top left, open the menu, go to terminal, split terminal. That will work too. That's probably the easier way, to be honest. So it's going to create a new terminal. And we're going to manually execute that, that other serverless function that we created, the upload cards, through the terminal here. So you can copy this code out of the repo. This will automatically generate the URL that you have specific to your Git pod, and then append the full path to it. So if I execute this, and keep an eye on this side of the terminal, because we'll actually see it execute over here. And we want to see a status 200 rather than a status 500. So we'll execute that. So we have a request. Take a little bit. Status 200 means it was successful. So our cards are now uploaded. Now if I refresh this browser, we should have our cards. And they should be randomly selected cards based on the rarity. So if I flip these over, you can see I did not get an ultra rare, so we know that they are different cards. And there we go. That is our... you do have to press enter after you paste it, Daniel.
Mm.
Yeah, it doesn't automatically execute.
Oh yeah, and when the upload cards function itself doesn't have a return, so you're not going to see it. You're going to do it, and it's not going to say like upload completed. Just rerun, just refresh the app, and you should have data.
Yeah, you should see a status 200 after you run it on this side of the terminal. This is your server that we ran here.
Yeah,
you'll see a status 200 saying that everything was good, but nothing's going to return on the part that you executed. All right.
Yeah, maybe we can make a little adjustment to that in the future and give a return code or something, or like a return message. It says you loaded data or whatever.
Yeah. All right, so give us a thumbs up if everything worked for you. I see a few issues that I'll try and address here in a little bit, but give us a thumbs up. We just want to make sure that everyone got through it. Jerome got a module build failure error pointing to the await keyword. If you have a specific area, like if it has like a file and a line number, I can go there and see what I have, and we can compare it. Unexpected reserved word await. Yeah, give me a file and a line number, and we can see what it's supposed to be. I don't see the curl command in GitHub. It's all the way at the bottom. In
Very
step
bottom.
9.
Yeah, I was just typing
Yep.
that one.
Someone else. Nothing happened. Okay, I addressed that. Gaming Python script. Getting response with status 500. Well, first off, this is JavaScript, not Python script.
Yeah.
Getting response with status 500. Try it again. See if maybe the communication to your database was it didn't work the first time. Double check your Astra client, because if your connection to your database isn't set up correctly, that would also cause it to fail. So just make sure that this is copied straight out of the GitHub, and this is pretty boilerplate code, other than the specific collection that we're using.
Yeah, and I see now the errors. Okay, so like Cone and others, if you have, if in the server you're getting an error like you see Cone has there, right? That tells me you just don't have data in the backend, right? Because that's what will happen when you try to run the cards, but there's no data on the backend. When you add the asynchronous await axios.get, right? That last little piece that Ryan did. If you don't have data on the backend, when it goes to get the data, it's not gonna return anything, and it's gonna error out, right? So make sure that you're running that upload, the upload cards curl at the very, very bottom, and you want to do that in another terminal, right? Do that. You can go. Maybe you could show that, Ryan, if you show them how to create another terminal, just in case.
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this terminal. So to open a new terminal, because this is running our service, right? So this is busy, right? We can't use this terminal for anything. So in the top left, you can open this menu, and then go down to Terminal, Split Terminal. This is just so that they'll be side by side. You could do new terminal as well, but Split Terminal so they'll be side by side. And then you can execute commands in here, and that's where you want to put the curl command. What exactly are you running when you use curl? You're just hitting a specific URL that you're providing. It's pretty simple. Curl is a built-in tool for command lines in general.
You know, Ryan, in in Discord, Denurabla has the most interesting screenshot. It's almost like their cards, both the front and back side, got merged into one.
Oh.
I've never seen that, right?
Yeah. Interesting. So that's going to be an issue, either an issue or what browser. First off, what browser are you using?
Yes, I was
because if it's an old browser, that could provide some issues. Because we are kind of using some fancy CSS on this, but that's in card flip. The card flip component, that's where the issue is going to arise if you have one. I would check. Oh man. I would check to make sure that your card component is in the correct div. It should be in the card front div. Just double check that. But Black Cat has it happening as well. Daniel, I'm running Netlify dev in one tab, in one terminal, because we need to create that Netlify environment to serve up the serverless functions. So not npm run dev. We need to do Netlify dev. And then the other tab, the other terminal, is where I run the curl command. Yep. And I should see the response on the first terminal. Hopefully that was clear. I know we're going back and forth. I see a few thumbs up. That's great. Awesome. For those of you who have it working, if you're interested in getting the badge, take a screenshot of this simple browser portion. That is what you need for the homework. We just want to see, first off, that we want to see a unique URL so we know it's yours. but we want to see it all working in this browser. Pan, and it's empty, no cards for you. So that is expected. Make sure you take a look at step 9. It says you may not be getting cards. We need to run the curl command in a new terminal that executes the function that uploads the cards, because we haven't done that yet. Devendra. Task timed out after 10 seconds. Is that when running the curl command? I wonder if your database connection settings are not correct. So if it's running the curl command, make sure your astraclient.js is structured correctly. Again, this is stuff that you can copy straight out of the GitHub repo if you're worried about typos. Accidentally clicked on terminal and it opened a new terminal window. So all your terminals are on the right side here. I'll make this window bigger. So your terminals you should be able to select different terminals over here. Oh, and David's head, where David's head is, that's where the new terminals are.
No, my head's in the way yet again. Yet again.
Oh, no Gitpod because I'm running locally, but then I don't have a unique URL. If it says localhost, that's fine. If you're working locally, it's still valid. Just give us a screenshot of it.
Yeah, and Shida and others who are curious, like, where do you submit the screenshot if you want a badge? In the repo itself, there is a explicit homework section. You just follow the instructions in the homework section. The last step there will have a link. You just click that. It'll bring you right to where you need to submit the homework.
Yep. Okay. So it looks like a lot of people have it working. That's awesome. Make sure you get your screenshot. I'm going to go ahead and do some closeout resource stuff because we're getting close to the time. Feel free to continue asking questions. We will address them as needed. I just want to make sure that we get to some of this stuff. So first off, let me switch to this. Okay, so we offer vouchers for Cassandra certification for attending our workshops. So you can scan this QR code with your phone if you want. You can go to that link. I also put a command in the YouTube chat that should get you a link that you can click on. These are vouchers for Cassandra certification, and there are 3 different tracks that are offered: administrator, developer, and Kate Sandra. And these vouchers are valid for 3 months, and they're valid for 2 attempts. So be sure, if you're interested in getting certified in Cassandra, take advantage of that. If you want to go through the courses that are recommended for getting certified, you can go to datastacks.com/academy. Or no, it's academy.datastacks.com. My bad.
Academy.datastacks.com.
Datastacks.com. We have all the courses needed to complete to learn what you need to know for these certifications, and it's all free. And again, there are different tracks for each of those certification levels. So you can check that out. For homework, so for this badge, the hands-on, just completing the hands-on portion, like I said, getting a screenshot of the working app is all that is required. An optional thing, though, is if you want to try and change the pack size. So right now we're working with 5 cards in a pack. If you want to try changing the pack size and figure out how to do that, that would be awesome. We'd love to see that, just a little bit more engagement and also prove that you did it and you understand it. That would be great. It is optional though. And to get there, you can go to the repo. If I go back to the repo here, actually, if you type in !homework, it'll get you a link straight there. But it is all the way at the top in the homework section here. Take your screenshot. You can click this link, submit your homework here. It'll create a template for you to fill out. And then we'll get to those. We manually grade those, so we'll get to those over the next week. and grade them as they come in. If you are interested in knowing what workshops we have coming up, you can go to datastacks.com/workshops. And that is kind of a running list of all the upcoming scheduled workshops that we have. We do workshops every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. Some of the things that are coming up is we have Cassandra Day Australia and New Zealand this Friday. So if you are in Australia or New Zealand, you can attend that. We have a lot of great speakers for an all-day event for that. We also have the reactive apps with Quarkus that is coming up on the 27th of October. So keep an eye on that. Go to datastacks.com/workshops to be up to date on the workshops that we have coming up. Discord, again, we have a growing community on Discord. You are very much invited to join. If you have questions that you have outside of a workshop, right, the YouTube chat will go away and we can't answer questions. So if you go to Discord and ask your questions, we'll be able to answer it. And we have a lot of people just out, even besides us, that are active in the Discord. We have a lot of community members that are very intelligent and very capable of answering your questions as well. So be sure to join us there. Sudeep, do you need that voucher link again? You can go to Devendra, just fill in your name. Yeah, you can don't use those caret brackets, but you can just fill in your name. So if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it would be greatly appreciated. All of our workshops are recorded and archived. So if you want to see some of our previous workshops, you can go ahead and check out our huge collection there. We regularly do these workshops, though. We're constantly updating them and rehosting them. So if you find one that you like or are interested in and want to catch a live version of it, we will most likely be doing a live version of it in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. But if you'd like to subscribe, you'll be notified of when we release new videos or when we go live, and that would be great. All right. So with that, if there are any other questions, I'll take a look.
Yeah, I called you out on Discord for a couple things, Ryan, just so you know.
Okay.
And I would say Jerome and others, if you're on the YouTube chat and you want to further troubleshoot things, come down to the Discord. Do the Bang Discord there in the YouTube chat so you can get the link, come down to our Discord, and then we can totally help you out after this. Because once we stop the stream, the YouTube chat will stop. Not only that, in Discord, you can give us screenshots, which does make it a lot easier sometimes to troubleshoot things.
Yes, definitely. And I see some of those questions in Discord. I'll address those in Discord after the stream. It looks like maybe some issues with the component, custom component part of things. So I'll address those in Discord. If anyone else has any questions and want to give some screenshots, then Discord is the place to go at this point. Well,
Oh, okay.
You got
I
something?
was gonna say I just saw somebody, one of the folks in Discord added a bunch of cards, so they figured that out.
Oh, nice. You found it. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. If you want to join us next week for our next workshop, that would be awesome. If you have any feedback on this workshop or any other workshop, we do have a channel in our Discord for workshop feedback. We would greatly appreciate your thoughts on what you liked, what you didn't like, what you think would be better. We always want to make these as good as they can be. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time. See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Have fun playing the game.
And as always, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notifications for all of our future upcoming workshops.
Imagine a being gifted with powers from the goddess of Cassandra, who grew those powers until she could multiply at will, move with limitless speed, and unmask hidden knowledge. With those powers, she was able to fully understand the connectedness of the world. What she saw was a world in need of understanding. From that day forward, she sought to bestow her powers on all who came into contact with her, empowering them to achieve wondrous feats.